Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now, the greatest sideline reporter in the NFL right now, and we get to listen to her every weekend doing the football games for the Dallas Cowboys. Kristi Scales, how you doing, Kristi?
Bryan, doing well. It's kind of a windy, cold day here in Dallas, as it is where you are, but kind of funny because the Cowboys had to change their practice schedule today. The high winds, they needed to go indoors, but they couldn't go to Cowboys Stadium because today is the first of 3 straight days of high school UIL state championship games.
Right.
So the 1A, 2 1A games and one of the 2A games is being played today, so the Cowboys have to go to Highland Park High School to practice on the indoor facility. Meanwhile, this afternoon, Monday, and I think it's pronounced Tanaha, are kicking off. So you can say that Monday and Tanaha kicked the Cowboys' tails right off of their own field.
I'll tell you, it's Tenaha because they're just north of Nacogdoches, and that's all deep East Texas, and my old stomping grounds down there. So yeah.
So Tenaha gets to play in the $1.2 billion Jerry World Palace.
I love it.
The Cowboys are over at Highland Park High School in Dallas.
Jerry gets kicked out of his own home by one of the smallest towns in East Texas. That's great.
That's
I love
awesome.
that. I love that. I got to ask you a number of things. Being on the sidelines, first of all, there's been something about this season that has brought out the surliness in Brad Sham that is I've just loved listening to it every week because the most memorable moment of the entire season, and it was in one of the overtime games when he called the game a steaming pile of excrement. And and I'm just wondering if you did you share these thoughts with him?
Oh yeah, you can feel it. And those of us, I've worked with Brad. This is my 22nd year, right? Working with Brad, and Brad and Babe are usually on the same wavelength, you know, but it comes out a little more in Brad's voice than it does in Babe's, you know. But even some of the games where the Cowboys have won, like the game against Cleveland at home and the game against Tampa earlier in the year, those first halves were so boring, you know, and then it's hard to not get frustrated, but Brad hasn't been as edgy the last few weeks as the Cowboys have gotten on their win streak, you know.
No, it's been a little bit more fun. It's been more positive, let's say, over the last 6 weeks than it was earlier. But
see, here's the thing. This is just a little, you know, insight, pull back the curtain kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're contract laborers who get paid by the game.
Right.
So we really want them to make the playoffs. we're like the players. We get a payoff check. It's just that it's, you know, a couple of commas less than, you know, and zeros less than the players.
Mama needs new shoes. I can totally get that. Exactly. Listen, I do the same thing with high school football. When my team goes out in the playoffs, I get really sad.
Yes, yes.
All right. I have to ask you, too, from your vantage point, the way this season has gone and the lack of home field advantage the Cowboys have had this year, did you feel like you were at a Pittsburgh Steelers ball game on Sunday?
It's just amazing not only that there are so many Steelers fans there, but it's like they get the really good tickets down in the lower 2 levels. But I think it's going to be like that again on Sunday with the Saints game. You know, the Saints played here Thanksgiving Day 2010, ended up having a comeback victory to beat the Cowboys, and in that fourth quarter it sounded like we were at the Superdome instead of Cowboys Stadium. But the thing about Pittsburgh is, yes, they travel well and you have a lot of Steelers fans, but there are already a lot of people, you know, from the Northeast and some of those Rust Belt cities that are already in Dallas, you know. It's like when the Dallas Stars, well, if we had hockey, if they were if they're playing the Red Wings, you know, there are as many Detroit Red Wings fans, and most of them don't have to travel. They're already here in Dallas because they came for jobs, you know. So I used to hate the Steelers because I grew up a Cowboy fan, and back in the 70s, you know, oh, gosh, I hate Lynn Swann and Terry Bradshaw and those guys. But the very first game I did in Pittsburgh, I think it was 1996 season opener. It might have been 1997. I'd never been to a game in Pittsburgh, and those are the best fans.
They are.
And they are. It's wonderful. It's a beautiful city. I thought it would be this, you know, decaying, you know, factory town. It's a beautiful area, you know, in southwest Pennsylvania. And the way that, and the longer that you're in the NFL, you know which teams are run the right way, and the Steelers are one of those teams. So now I have utmost respect for them. But it is a little embarrassing when, I wouldn't say it was 50-50 last Sunday at Cowboy Stadium, the ratio of fans, but it was pretty close.
And you're right. Having grown up in South Louisiana, I know what kind of Saints fans are going to be coming over for this ball game this weekend. Even though their team is pretty much done now, they certainly are capable. Extremely capable of beating the Cowboys. So they're going to be really loud and they're going to be jacked up. And I'm just interested to see whether the Cowboy fans are drinking the Kool-Aid now after a 5-1 run here.
I don't think they are. I think there's still some skepticism. It's like everyone still remembers the Decembers of the past 10 years. And is wary of the Saints. And the Saints are only 6-8 and have that losing record and started the season 0-4, and the Bountygate scandal has dogged the team all year. But Drew Brees is number one in touchdown passes and in passing yards. And overall, the team is fourth in scoring in the league, but it's just under 28 points a game.
Yeah.
So it's their defense that's been abysmal. They're literally last in the league in total defense and second to last in rush defense and pass defense. So, this game could be a real shootout. If you play fantasy football, if you have Romo or Brees this weekend, you'll probably do pretty well.
You better hang on. And then you think about what the Cowboys put out there in the defensive secondary last week. I mean, had you ever heard of like half of those guys?
Well, I'd heard of them just because, you have to keep track of it. But talking with there's one of the guys in the player personnel department that works with Stephen Jones. His name is Todd Williams, and he's the one that literally does all the paperwork and transactions. Stephen's the head of it and in charge, but Todd actually executes the contracts and all that kind of stuff. And so I was talking with him before the game last week, and literally that the week leading into the win last Sunday, there were 6 transactions that week. And in the regular, now 3 of those were practice squad players, but that's a high amount. Todd said that's the most he had ever done in the regular season. I mean, that's more than you even do in training camp, the beginning of training camp when you're trying to fill out your roster. But there was one point, Bryan, where it was a substitution in the game in the first half on like a third down play, and they ended up forcing a punt, and we got in the break, and I told Brad and Babe, I said, oh my gosh, that substitution on the third down play, 4 players came out. The 4 that went in were Victor Butler, who we all know.
Right.
He's backup linebacker and ended up having a huge game Sunday. And then they traded out 3 defensive backs, and onto the field went Eric Frampton, Sterling Moore, and Michael Coe.
Oh, my God.
And Frampton had been here the longest at like 8 weeks. Coe had been there 4 days.
Wow. That's
and
just
Sterling
insane.
Moore had been there 3 weeks. So, you're taking out, the Jenkinses and the McCrays and, guys who were backups anyway. And you're literally sending out people who would be third string and fourth string. But learn those names, Cowboys fans, because you're going to see a lot of them against the Saints offense. I mean, obviously they'll go 3 wide and 4 wide the whole time, or you would think they would.
All day long.
So that you could, Michael Coe had been with the Giants the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season, actually played 2 games against the Cowboys, started the season opener against the Cowboys that Wednesday night game way back September 5th because Prince Amukamara was injured, so Coe got the start. Anyway, he had played the Cowboys twice. He gets cut by the Giants and then is with Miami Dolphins for a couple of weeks, gets waived last Monday, is claimed by the Cowboys Tuesday afternoon. His agent gets a call about 4:30 in the afternoon saying, hey, the Cowboys have claimed Michael. So Michael gets a call from his agent, gets on a plane at 9 o'clock, leaves Miami, arrives in Dallas at midnight, and 8 hours later is in a team meeting with the Cowboys on the practice field that morning, and then playing a pretty decent amount of snaps that Sunday.
And the thing about it is, with all of that going on, the Cowboys probably put together their best overall game since the Giants game to open the season.
Oh, I think so. Just in terms, you mean like in terms of all three phases?
Yeah, just
Making the plays?
playing really well. I mean, the offensive line actually played like an NFL offensive line. I mean, it was incredible, you know?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because it was the second week of the rotation at right tackle where Jeremy Parnell was getting some series in place of Doug Free. Now, the week before, Parnell had gotten like 2 series, or 2.5 series. And then this past week, they actually rotated series by series. So Doug Free did the first offensive series, Parnell the second, Free the third, Parnell the fourth, and on and on. So it's really split time there now, whereas the previous week it was probably, 3/4 of the snaps went to Free. Last week it was closer to half.
Wow. It's just amazing. Now, I got to ask her, I mean no disrespect when I ask this question, but we see constantly the reference being made to guys literally coming in off the streets to step in and play in NFL ball games. Is it a possibility that the guys off the street are actually better than the guys that they replaced?
I don't think it's that. It's just that they're warm bodies who are healthy. You can say they have fresh legs, that's for sure. Actually, it is a difficult thing because let's take Bryan Schafering, for example. Who the heck is Bryan Schafering?
Exactly. Nice guy.
Schafering was like Michael Coe in that he got signed on Tuesday of last week and practiced with the team Wednesday. Michael Coe is Bryan Schafering is a defensive tackle who had played the previous 3 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. The first 2 of those seasons, he played under Rob Ryan, the Cowboys defensive coordinator. And so when, with Jay Ratliff injured and then Josh Brent on the non-football illness list and not able to play for the Cowboys, they needed reinforcements at defensive tackle. Well, Schafering had been cut by the Browns, at the end of camp, end of preseason, and had been out of football. And so you could say the guy had fresh legs, but for the past 3.5 months, he hasn't been, you can work out on your own, but it's not the same as going through NFL practices and the like. So, he had, like a 15 snaps on Sunday and made a contribution. So, can they come in and be a stopgap? Yeah. Is it someone that you can count on for the remainder of the season? Well, it better be because there are 2 more games and hopefully at least a couple more in January.
So what does this say then about a coaching staff that people were ready to run out of town 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And here they are managing to keep this thing together with duct tape and, wire. And here they are at 8-6 with their destiny in their own hands now.
Rob Ryan is getting the majority of credit for the way he's duct taped that defense together, and deservedly so. But I think that we should give honorable mentions to people like Jerome Henderson, who's the defensive backs coach, and Joe Baker, who works with the safeties, Brian Baker, the defensive line coach, for getting people like Schafering up to speed. So yeah, it's a huge thing. And can I say one other thing?
Sure.
Talking about these injuries and bringing people off the street and things like that. And it's not just backup guys going out. I mean, around the league, you have guys who would be 3rd string, 4th string, who are now playing across the league. Not just the Cowboys. This is other teams as well. Now, I know that a lot of fans want to cut down on preseason and think it's a good idea for the NFL to go to the 18-game regular season schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought it was a terrible idea, and I'm biased because as a sideline reporter, 90% of what I do is injuries, okay?
Right.
So I'm very focused on it, and it's top of mind for me. And you see how hard it is for a team to get through a season. Look at what the Cowboys are now. Can you imagine if there were 2 more regular season games?
I'm with you. I think it's a really bad idea.
Yeah, and the marquee quarterbacks that wouldn't be able to finish the season. And what about what is it going to look like? A home game in Jacksonville in the middle of January when your team is literally 10 games out of first place.
Oh, it'll be brutal.
Maybe 12 games out, 14 games out, for mid-January for some of these teams. I know that it's going to happen. eventually.
Sure.
Because there's too much money out there. This is a business, and money is the bottom line, and that's what they're in for. But if the NFLPA, the Players Association, caves on this, sooner rather than later, I just think it really hurts the product. And that's as you say, no disrespect to the Bryan Schaeferings and the Michael Coes of the world. But when we pay huge money for season tickets, we want to see Jay Ratliff, right?
Absolutely.
We want to see Tony Romo. Redskins fans, gosh, they love Kirk Cousins. He's got 2 wins for him, but they're paying to see RG3.
Exactly. All right, I know you got to run here pretty quickly, but I got to ask you, what do you see happening now in these last 2 ball games? I mean, this team, December has been very unkind to the Cowboys now for almost a decade, and yet this team is so much more mentally tough than the teams of the past that I'm just wondering if this is going to be different this year.
I hope so. And it feels different. But, all it takes is a couple of long passes from Drew Brees to Marcus Colston or Jimmy Graham getting free on a seam,
Yeah.
and slamming it over the goalpost, right, over the crossbar to bring all the expectations hurtling back to, the past 10 years reality. So, I can just tell you that it feels different this year. And part of it is because of the extreme circumstances of the last couple of weeks with the Josh Brent and Jerry Brown situation, but it really was galvanizing for this team. And you can't say it created momentum because that's not the right word for it, but it did bring everybody together, So can they carry that on, and can they stay healthy enough, and can Rob Ryan's duct tape hold it together against a Saints offense that, as I say, even though they have a losing record, Drew Brees is still number 1 in touchdown passes, touchdown yards, and they're such an impressive offense. It's just, this really may be one where Tony Romo and the Cowboys offense, it's going to be a shootout, I think, Sunday, and we'll see. The other thing is, I mentioned the Saints have the worst run defense in the league. What's the best remedy to go against Drew Brees and the Saints? Keep them off the field.
Exactly.
If DeMarco Murray can be healthy and the Cowboys can establish a run game, and you mentioned that the offensive line has looked better the last couple of weeks, maybe they can play a little bit of keep away on Sunday.
I got to ask you another thing, too, because you brought it up, Josh Brent. When did you notice that he was on the sidelines this past Sunday?
When he walked out there about 2 minutes before the national anthem. I was mildly surprised. But right before the anthem, I saw him there. He was in street clothes, sweat hoodie and sweatpants. And during the national anthem, he was standing. The guys stand on the end line,
Sure.
during the anthem. And so once we're in a commercial break during the anthem, and I told Brad and Babe and our producer, because we can communicate during commercial breaks, and I said, guys, Josh Brent is here, and it's probably worth a mention because it's going to create some controversy.
Oh yeah.
So all I did was just say, hey, he's here, and he was placed on the NFI list, earlier in the week, and the team feels that it's best to have him near his teammates, coaches, and access to the facility, and obviously that applies to the sidelines on Sunday because he's down here, and he's holding Jerry Brown's jersey as it draped over his shoulder. And that's really all I said, and I think that's all we said the whole broadcast, really, at least, the 3-hour game broadcast. I know they talked more about it in post-game, but, Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett didn't know that he was going to be down there, but teammates had encouraged him to be there, and he did leave in the third quarter and wasn't out there for the remainder of the second half. But I as soon as I saw him, I was mildly surprised, and I thought, ooh, this is going to get a lot of talk.
Yeah. Were you bothered by it?
I was not, just because I was bothered in the fact that, okay, this is going to draw a lot of focus.
Right.
But I wasn't bothered personally by it because I think that the best thing that you can do, what's happened has happened, and nothing can bring Jerry Brown back. But you can help salvage another young man's life, Josh Brent.
Right.
And is there anything that you can do to Josh that would be worse than what he's feeling now, what he did to his best friend? So, if his teammates, if Jerry Brown's mother is okay with it, then why should the rest of us have a problem with it?
Very well said. Good stuff. Hey, Kristi, we can't thank you enough for coming on. We love listening to the ball games. We wish you Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and we wish you many, many playoff games this year.
Yay! Wouldn't that be great? Hey, thanks, Bryan. And if is Tenaha in your listening range?
They are there.
I hope they get the win today. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be wonderful. That'd be one of 3 East Texas teams we've got, so we're pulling hard for them.
Who are the other 2
We've
now?
got Dangerfield and Gilmer.
Oh, so Dangerfield is noon tomorrow.
Right.
Right.
And then Gilmer's tomorrow night. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, those kids and the families, everybody be safe driving. It's cold here, so be bundled up, even though just getting to the parking lot into the stadium can be quite a trek.
Perfect. Yes, I know it can be. Hey, thanks again, Kristi, and again, happy holidays to you so much.
Thanks, Bryan. Appreciate it.
Good talking to you. All right. Kristi Scales, a sideline reporter for the Dallas Cowboys Radio Network on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.